Hey, Alex. Nice to see you.
Joanna, hey everybody.
Hey, Alexei. Hello.
Hi everyone. Yeah.
Good to see you. I didn't think so many people will join. I thought July is like a vacation period, but obviously you're workaholics.
Summer is a perfect period for vacations, but in our case, it's hard to find time and place where we can have a rest because of our situation.
Yeah. Where are you now, by the way?
In Kharkiv, Ukraine.
Whoa. Okay, that's what I mean.
Yeah. Near Russia, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I would add to this. Yeah, Joanna, I would add that CKAN is a lot of fun. On the other hand, so vacation could be enriched by the CKAN experience.
Great spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are still people joining. That's why I'm not kicking off yet. Let's wait one more minute. How's the CKAN 3 going? Research process.
Yeah, that would be fun. Yeah, I can fill several minutes on this and I would be happy, really. So interview number 23 happened yesterday. Today it will be a new interviewee. And I have interviews booked until the end of this month. So it's clearly already 7, 8 directions where we can go functionally or in terms of developing the tool. So it's more about still working on interviews, but the next step would be summarizing all the information from them. And I would like really to have a presentation and basically share all the findings. And what I see is that it's something that is the same interview to interview. So there are topics like secure sharing, user roles, a flexible search option. Like 70–80% of respondents would like to have them. And this is pretty interesting. So there are still topics that could be covered and could please a lot of people in the CKAN community. But there are still something unique I get from interview. And so I don't want to lose even the smallest bit of information, smallest thought. Even if one person is about it for 10 seconds, I want to have it on the map and then to present, say, the overall scope and summaries and vectors and all that, and have a discussion around the community on basically on the findings. So this is where I am right now.
Yeah, that's great. I have a question. Do you have like more technical or non-technical input? Or is there a balance between technical input and non-technical input? Or
Okay, I would say that at the current stage, it's a balance. So I started talking more with developers, and right now it's managers, data stewards, basically people who manage communities, some business people as well. What I still lack, and I don't feel that I would be able to cover, is enough end users. So basically journalists, scientists. So I think it would be a good topic for next research to start right away, and basically to inform UX, UI with more end user input.
Sounds exciting. Yeah,
that's true. That's a really cool journey. I'm so happy. The community is so nice. People are smart. I don't know, well-minded, with perspective in mind. So the open data is really a right place to be. This is my impression.
Great. Okay, I think it's time for us to kick it off. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our CKAN Monthly Live. That's number 12. I'm happy to see so many people. I thought we are not going to have so many attendees because in July, usually people are on vacation. But I'm glad that you are all here. Now, before I jump into some introduction about our guest today, let me quickly share with you two interesting events. And I'm sorry if I'm interrupting a little bit, but there are people joining all the time, so I need to admit them all. So the first event is Machine Learning Day, which is on the 4th of August. I send you the presentation so you can find the link straight there. And the second event is the Open Source Summit Europe. The one for North America was already is already gone. So this one will the Europe edition will be in September. You can check it out if it's interesting. If Steven is on the call, he can share some experience with the North American one. If not, no. The agenda for today is we are going to have a presentation from Guilherme Jablonowski. I'm not, you're going to correct me with the pronunciation. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, so this was the introduction, 10 minutes, then presentation from Guilherme, then we're going to have a Q&A session, 10 to 15 minutes, then community announcement and sharing. Alex already updated us on the product strategy, so we a little bit moved the agenda backwards, and then we're going to closing. Today, we're going to talk about a very interesting project, very exciting. I'm sure you all read the introduction. The topic is about the Urban Data Portal. It's a project which is developed by the Master's Program in Architecture and Urbanism at
the Federal Fluminense University, which means it's
in Rio de Janeiro. The main objective of the project is to have a single instance to store the data that tend to be useful to researchers and students, and the data that is generated by the research conducted within the program. And in order to meet the needs of researchers in the urban studies field, the team developed several plugins and customizations, which Guilherme Jablonowski will tell us about. Now, Guilherme is a director at Piano C. He is a geospatial data scientist and developer with a very interesting biography. Asking questions. So there are two ways to ask a question. You can raise a hand and go ahead, or you can drop things in the chat. I'll try to capture all questions so that we can answer them in the Q&A session. Just to flag to people, the meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. And with that being said, I think I can pass over to Guilherme. Let me know if you can share your screen. I'll just stop sharing now.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So thank you for having me today. I'm here to talk to you about this open data portal that was developed for specifically urban research interest. It was done, as Joanna said, for the post-graduation program in Architecture and Urbanism at UFF here in Brazil. So most of the screenshots I'll be showing today will be in Portuguese. I apologize. I didn't realize to change the language before taking the exam. So for starters, who am I? Why am I here? So I'm Guilherme Jablonowski. I am an architect by formation, which I did here in Brazil, although not in Rio, way down south. And then I did a master's degree in urban planning in France, and I have a specialist degree in road safety. But as you'll notice from this, kind of more recent projects I've been working my experience, my work experience has been pretty much based in digital cartography and geospatial data. It's been kind of one thing leads to the next. So architecture leads to urbanism, which leads to cartography, which leads to coding, which leads to systems, and then you don't even know where I started anymore. I have worked with proprietary software, so I have worked for a local distributor for Esri before, but didn't really fit too well, and now I very much strive for open source data and open source tools. My current position is geospatial data scientist at Clear Global, which is an NGO that has a focus on language, and so I'm very much the one in charge for the linguistic maps, for which there is no singular database available elsewhere. So that's what I'm trying to do there. You can catch more about me on my personal website, which is noted right there under my name. So I expect we have some urban researchers today with us. So I say I'll try to keep things as plain as possible, so as to the message is clear. I apologize for very senior developers. It might be underwhelming, but yeah. So what is the PPL program at UFF? Basically, they have been founded in 2003 by researchers from architecture, urbanism, geography, sociology, economics, etc. It's very much on the nature of urban studies. They offer master's and PhD degrees. They are located in Niterói, so it's the city right next to Rio de Janeiro. They have this kind of view to their campus. And they pretty much focus on urban sustainability and social technologies and urban technologies. And they approached me last year with an issue. So who approached me was Vinicius Neto. He was to be the director of the program. And their problem was, even though they had the university's portal for publishing theses and research papers and whatnot, they really didn't have a way to share data sets among researchers and students. So every time a research would generate new data sets, and here you have some examples from Vinicius himself. They're very, so Brazil, urban studies in Brazil are very much, they draw a lot from geography and GIS, and we tend to generate new data sets with spatial metrics. It's a big subject in Brazil, which is very much inherited from the UK. And so these data sets are being created by each research, and there's really no good way to put them out there and have other researchers be able to find them and use them for their own research. And a second difficulty they have is that very often researchers will need the same data. So for instance, when you talk census data, it's been the same for 10 years now, almost 12. And it does require some processing and cleaning, and researchers have to do that every time they had to, or maybe someone has a good database sitting in their computers, but they have no way of setting up a page where we need income data from the census. We have it here. It's already processed. You can just use it. So they were looking for a way to share the data set, and the only thing is most of these data sets take on a spatial format. So for those who are not familiar with spatial formats, these are going to be either rasters, so that means pixels, or vectors, so points and lines and polygons. And the formats, it's a long list, but shapecards and GeoJSON and this and whatnot. So they needed a way to store these and be able to at least visualize them before downloading them. And so when we started to talk about options, the researchers there, as many people working in the geospatial field, were pretty much used to two kinds of systems. So on the one hand, you have the GeoNode stack, which pretty much is based on a GeoServer that draws data from PostGIS database. And the problem with that, so all of it is open source, right? And I'll move on to the next one, and I'll talk about the problem with both of them. So you have GeoNode, GeoServer, PostGIS, which is a free open source tool, or you have ArcGIS Enterprise or ArcGIS Online, which is a proprietary software. And when you do the conversion from American dollars to the local currency in Brazil, real, it gets to the, it very easily becomes a multi-million project. So it gets really expensive. And usually you don't really have the need for all that. But the problem with those two systems is that you are essentially duplicating the data every step along the way. So you have either a PostgreSQL or PostGIS database or the ArcGIS data store. So that's one instance of your data, and then it'll be used to create services either on GeoServer or on the ArcGIS server. So it's a different format, and still it will take space on that server, and then that in time will be taken into a visualization portion of the architecture. So it's either an open layers instance or an ArcGIS portal. And in ArcGIS portal, you can duplicate once again the data if you want to have it hosted in the portal. So basically, these solutions take not it's not a tiny space in a machine for you to have these systems. And once you notice you have like 1,000 data sets, and it starts to take a lot of space. So this is something we could not have. So the university would be able to provide it with a server, but it would be very limited in terms of storage. So we had this problem in our hands, and this is mainly the reason why we decided to move into CKAN. So the main good thing about CKAN for us was that data wouldn't have to be duplicated, and what's more is for the most cases we wouldn't even have to store the data ourselves. So for the ones that are not familiar with CKAN at all, I'll just say CKAN is, in its most primitive state, metadata portal. So this means you can store information about a certain data set, but you don't have to store the data set itself, although you can. So most instances of CKAN out there will have the system database, which you see under models. But it will also have the data store extension activated, so it creates a separate database for files that you might have in your machine that you want to upload to the portal, and so you can do that. But for most cases, you can just upload the metadata about a dataset and have the link so the URL for that specific data set. And so this saves a non-ordinary amount of storage in a machine. So getting to our architecture here. So we got ourselves an Ubuntu 10.4 server. We used CKAN 2.9.4, which was the latest one at the time. And the main extensions we used to make sure the experience was as close as possible to what users were expecting from those two previous systems I mentioned. So we use GeoView, spatial, and schema, and I'll get into that right now. So just to clarify and to give examples of what I just mentioned about not having to store the data itself. So this right here is the search page for data sets, and then you have, for instance, that first one, right? So it states about the existence of regulatory planning in municipalities with under 20K inhabitants. And then you see those two tags underneath it. So it has a shapefile and a WMS service. When I go check it, so I have in the title of this item, a description of it, and then under data and resources, I have two resources. So one of these is the shapefile, and one of them is the WMS. And once I click on them, I can see that it is actually just pointing to a URL. So it's pointing to the Statistics and Geography Institution for Brazil, which is called EDGE. And so it's just pointing to their own geo server. So it can have, so right now what it's doing is just making a call to the geo server over there and bringing it over to us so I can have a look at that specific service. And the same will go for the shapefile that was showing there. So I am not wasting any space duplicating a data set here, just pointing to it. And I can, so there's a button with the Baixar, which is basically download in Portuguese. So I can actually download this data set without having to store it myself. So what's making it possible for us to visualize these data sets on a map is the GeoView extension. So this doesn't ship with CKAN by default. It's super easy to install. I really won't get into too much detail about install. If you want, we can chat later about that. But essentially, GeoView allows for whenever a spatial type is stored in our CKAN instance, you can preview it in a map. So this one, which you see here on the left, is a shapefile. So it's an actual file that is being rendered in the map, which is different than a GeoService, right? So before we were looking into this particular map, and the difference between these two is that this second one, since it's a GeoService, it already comes with symbology. So you have different symbologies applied to different cities there, and this can come with this definition, and it will also be way more lightweight because the storage strategy there is different. So this one is being stored in tiles instead of in actual points. And then there's the spatial extension. So GeoView and the spatial extension used to be one and the same. Now they are not, because most of the time people are really just looking for these options, right? For the option to be able to visualize data sets before they download them. But spatial, essentially what this does is it'll activate PostGIS on CKAN's PostgreSQL database. And for those who are not familiar with PostGIS, basically when you have a PostgreSQL database, that you have your tables there, and PostGIS will basically make it possible for you to have one extra type of data in a column, which will be the spatial type or GIS geometry type. So basically every row in a column can have geometry and a spatial projection to it. So you can actually pinpoint each row in space following any coordinate system and projection. And the way this will change our CKAN experience is that whenever I create a new data set, I will have a new field to populate, which is the geospatial extension. And the format it will require is in GeoJSON format, which in my opinion is one of the shortcomings of the current state of the spatial extension. Most users have a hard time figuring out how to get the GeoJSON format for the spatial type. So I had to include very lengthy instructions right after this field, so researchers could use it in the best way possible. And once I have a spatial extension for each data set, this means I can start making my searches by spatial by a certain spatial footprint, right? So what you're doing there is I have now that little map that shows on the corner of the possible filters for the data set, and I can draw then those rectangles and have the data sets filtered by that particular spatial footprint. And this works rather well, but there's a limitation to this. And the issue there is, let's say I want to filter. So what I'm doing there is I want to filter a data set that overlap with the city of São Paulo, right? And so it is absolutely doing that, but it is also showing us data sets that apply to the entirety of Brazil, because São Paulo is in Brazil, so the data sets that cover Brazil as a whole will also show up in this search. So just by filtering spatially, I won't be able to get the data sets that are specific to the city of São Paulo. But still, it's pretty useful for a bunch of different use cases. And then because of that, we went on and we decided to use the scheming extension, and it's a very known one. And what this does is it allows us for add and remove custom metadata fields. So by default, CKAN will have a number of fields that are to be filled in when you upload a new item to the portal. But we wanted to have some more, like having from which database this came from which project, which year was this publicated. But most important, we added a spatial extension field and a state and municipality field. So this means that when in the spatial extension, I have the option to say this covers Brazil as a whole, or this covers all of the municipalities in Brazil, or this covers all states in Brazil, or I can say this covers a specific state and a single one, or this covers a specific municipality. And in which case, if I pick a specific municipality, then the state and municipality fields that follow it become mandatory. And then I have to give that information. And once I get that information, I I will be able to then filter my data set by municipality, for instance, or by state. And then something else we did was, well, besides being able to filter through the menu on the left by municipality or state, we actually made some changes to the look and feel, to the user interface. So you will notice that right beneath the title of each data set, you also have a little text, and that text is saying the state and the municipality to which that data set applies, or it might just say Brazil as a whole, or Brazil every municipality. So it's one of the things that planners are very much looking for, because sometimes they just on the right scale for what they're needing, or you just have to download something to realize, oh, this is not at the neighborhood scale, this is at municipality scale. So this makes it much more easy and quicker to realize. There you go. So I know that this particular data set applies to the state of Rio de Janeiro and the municipality of Rio de Janeiro specifically. And finally, we did some customizations to the homepage. So the look and feel of the homepage, we have so we have the groups set up. So each data set has to belong at least to one of these groups, to have, environment, planning, mobility, and health, etc. And this was all developed using Jinja templates in our own custom extension. And yeah, I guess this is it. So I'm very much keen on hearing any questions you might have. And thank you.
Thank you. That was a really interesting presentation. We have a question from Arina about the presentation slides. If you can send it to me, then I can provide it under the YouTube video and also in our recap blog post.
Sure.
Is that fine with you? Great.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Great. Okay, so we are officially opening the floor for a Q&A session. So please, if you have questions, feel free to ask. You can raise a hand and go ahead. You can drop things in the chat. I can see there is a question from Joel. I'll be glad to hear your voice, Joe. You have a pretty good voice. And I kind of miss it.
Thanks, Joanna. But yeah, my question was just, is the PPGAU a public repo? Because you did a lot of great things.
Yeah, yeah, it is, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, if you could just drop the link, it would be great. Because I tried looking for it and we couldn't find it. Thank you. Thanks, man.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Olalekan. Wonderful presentation. Thank you. Just reading, following through that presentation was quite inspiring. Well, in terms of introduction, I'm a data scientist and I'm also a software engineer. And I work for an NGO, a non-profit, and we are looking at creating a data portal, right? And because I'm a data scientist on the team, so it's expected that I should be able to at least spearhead the initiative. So in the course of me doing my research, I came across CKAN. And I've gone through a number of demo of CKAN, and I'm just like, wow, this is it. So I'm just hoping to, if possible, get maybe, okay, thank you, Florian. But if there is a project or if there's an end-to-end tutorial that can guide a beginner like myself on how to, start, develop and deploy a data portal on CKAN, I think that would be very helpful for somebody like me. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So I actually have used the official docs quite a bit. I found them to be really comprehensive. But I also did find some tutorials out there, some example projects that have been done. I haven't really been able to find anything that was using the exact same extensions we use here. So there were some issues with the compatibility between them. So I had to back and forward a couple of times to get all of them to work together and in harmony. I can't remember right now the name of the guy. I might be able after that to be able to find a link, but I did. It's Herman something. So there's this researcher from the Open Data Brazil, who's quite knowledgeable on CKAN, and especially on running Dockerized CKAN instances. And I found his texts to be pretty enlightening. If I get to remember or find the link afterwards, I'll be able to send on to one. She can put it in the docs.
I also dropped a link to the community page at CKAN.org. You can go there and see. So CKAN is a project that have both commercial and community support. There are a lot of links that can actually help you to get more info. So yeah, check it out. Community page. And then I can see many people are dropping links.
Oh,
in the chat.
Actually, he's right here, Augusto Herman. I really want to thank you so much for your text. They have been really useful. Thank you so much.
Hi.
Hey, Augusto, hi.
There you are.
I just wanted to jump in and kind of, say thank you so much for this presentation. We've been considering, extending CKAN to do spatial related, work with spatial data. And so this really kind of accelerates our thinking on that. I just wanted to touch, I know you mentioned at the outset about the challenges about data storage and kind of how you are looking to link out to other assets to kind of further enable that researcher kind of and community engagement. Just kind of exploring a little bit, looking at the performance, go pull these data as render on the client side. Can you, I think you mentioned a little bit about the challenges of data size. Do you have any thoughts about how to improve that UX as it relates to viewing the spatial data? I'm just kind of curious where you would go next, because I think that would be, from an experience perspective, users want to kind of quickly get in there, see the data, and make their decisions about it. So I don't know if you can comment generally about, what your thoughts are. If you had all the storage in the world, right, that would, then it's close to your servers. But I don't know what other thoughts you have.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, this has been one of the main challenges there. So when we first installed GeoView, we basically couldn't visualize any shapefiles at all, because all of them were just too large for the default threshold for the amount of data it can leverage from a different source and make it show up in the open layers line. So we had to change that. So once we changed that threshold, it helped. So very simple shapefiles will show, like the one I showed just now, which were neighborhoods, I think, in the city. So that's fine. But when it gets a little larger than that, and it is just not good practice to try to render it on the client side, every time. So this is why most of it is basically working under WMS or WFS services coming from different geo servers. So I think that is the way to go. But still, there are some difficulties in generating the right link format. So if I go into a GeoServer now, I just copy the WMF link for any given service, it won't work right away. I'll need to actually do some editing to that URL. So I need to add like a hashtag somewhere. Anyway, it's not super super easy for the inexperienced user to work with. So I think I'd go that direction. Maybe looking into ways to make the integration between GeoServers and CKAN to be more seamless.
Thank you. Yeah, well, we're gonna kind of take a look and have lots of experience working with various data sources, spatial data sources, integration potentially with Esri resources, given that's a major repository out there in the world, to kind of get that content connected and make sure people can kind of engage with it effectively. So thank you again for your efforts and your time today.
Sure.
Thank you. Do you have more questions? I can see we missed one question from, okay, Adria, you can go ahead. And then I can see Joan has a question, so we'll
Hi.
first, yeah.
Thanks, Guilherme. That was super exciting. I'm really happy to see CKAN being used in a spatial context. I was the one that originally started CKAN Spatial many years ago. I'm happy to see it being put to use. I think there's a lot of potential for CKAN in geospatial, and as you mentioned, different points that definitely think it could be ironed out in terms of integration with other platforms. I mean, not like this geospatial URL that you say, this is just a bug, I would say, and this is something that we should allow it. But I think there's a lot of room for improvement, not only on the search itself, or with Solar, new versions of Solar have many more spatial capabilities, but also in terms of visualization, in integrating either with GeoServer or with more modern pipelines with vector tiles or stuff like this to make really transparent for users that they upload or link to data, and then CKAN or a separate service generates a visualization service for them. So I will be really keen on exploring this, and happy to give guidance or help expect new developments on this front.
All right.
Thank you, Andrea. Somebody raised a hand. Robert, you can go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. Is the code available? And if yes, can you insert a link to the chat? Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Augusto, go ahead, please.
I wanted to thank Guilherme for the presentation. I have taken a look at the portal. I think it's awesome. It's put to good use some really cool CKAN extensions and a really good organizations of spatial data sets. So I think this portal can be seen as an example, a role for other CKAN portals to follow. I would really like to see some of those. I have been trying to get some of those plugins in the national portal, which I helped create in dados.gov.br. I helped create in 2012 and up to 2018. And now I have been publishing some data sets there, but I'm not responsible for the portal anymore. And some of those data sets have geospatial coordinates or elements, but the national portal does not have that interface that these plugins help visualize. So I think that's really cool and helps drive people to be more interested in using the data sets. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I really have to thank you so much for all of your work out there. It really helps. But yeah, I think I haven't either been able to find many other CKAN portals using it for geospatial capabilities. And I think it's a real shame because we have been, so I have been working for Esri in 2019, and they really have the easiest time, selling overpriced products, because there's really sort of a gap there. Either you really need a whole lot of experience and storage for a GeoNode server, and it takes maintenance isn't so easy. So they have a really powerful marketing machine, and they have been, and it really killed me to see municipalities spend like billions over something they really didn't have to. So I think there are things that could be improved that would bring more of the geospatial users into CKAN. I think there's some room for improvement, but it's definitely possible right now. And with the main my selling point has always been like it's going to need a lot of storage for this, and it'll ship pretty lightly. So I think it's basically these reasons, because otherwise the very advanced capabilities in these technologies. So as we now have Python notebooks integrated to their portals, but most people are not really using that. Most people just want to visualize the data and then download it, and it's the use case. So I'm very confident more people could be using it, but are not, because they don't know they don't know about it yet. So yeah, I hope we can spread the word.
Yeah, thank you. I can see there is a question from Joanne in the chat. Joanne, if you're on the call, you can go ahead, or I can read it for you. It's connected with the hosting challenges. Is it made inside the university? Are there containers something else?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was somewhat challenging. So we had a staging server in a local machine. The university was only able to provide us with one server. So the production it's just the production server itself. So we have to work with what we have. And yeah, so we had to access via a VPN, and since it's not too complex to access remotely, I basically never had to go to Rio, which is a shame. Which I could have done that at least once. But yeah, so it was just remote access, and we did consider using Docker to begin with. So we actually were able to make it work with Docker. I even wrote an article about how to work with a Dockerized CKAN instance when you're working on a Mac, which I am, and it's not too easy. There are some real limitations there. So in the end, I decided not to, and just do it in the classic way. So yeah, nothing too extraordinary there.
Thank you. Augusto.
I have one more question. I see in your presentation you have mentioned that you have cataloged a data set from the National Statistics Office, the IBGE, and that data set gets a visual preview. Have you had any problems with cross-origin resource sharing, or is that loaded in the browser and then rendered by the extension, or was it just straightforward, just you insert the resource URL and that's it? It's done.
Yeah, so we had some issues with course policy, and in the end, we decided, so we'll only be using the links for institutions that are really stable and for which we know the links won't be changing anytime soon. So IBGE was one of them. And we didn't have any troubles with those data sets because their GeoServer has an SSL certificate, so it works pretty smoothly. The main limitation there was getting the right URL for the service, or just getting the one that GeoServer provides is not enough. It has to, it has to be in a particular format. So that was the main limitation. We were able to get data from other portals, like the city of Rio has its own ArcGIS portal. We have no problem with that either. They have an SSL certificate, and so do we. Oh yeah, so we had to get an SSL certificate. We got a free one from Let's Encrypt, and after that, it all went pretty smoothly. So yeah, that wasn't really a big barrier for us.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? I'm aware of time, so I suggest if somebody has a last question, then please feel free to ask. And then if not, we can go to closing. Maybe Alex?
I'm impressed by the implementation, and Guilherme is very, I would say, specialized on the geospatial information. So I don't know, it's such a specific way. It's one of the directions that I clearly see for us to move on, but it's not the only. And I'm more like a learner here. So yeah, what I can say is thank you very much for sharing your knowledge, because you definitely have an edge on this.
Yeah, thank you as well. Okay, so we have 2-3 minutes, and I suggest we wrap it up. So thank you, everyone. Thanks to Guilherme for the great presentation. I think it's a very exciting project. It was a pleasure to have you here. All right, so if you want to present to CKAN Monthly Live, you can fill out our form. It is available in the meeting doc. You have the presentation in the chat, but I think it's a good idea that I share the links as well, because for the new joiners, there's no chat history. So let me drop in the links now. You can also write straight to me personally, and yeah, we'll make sure to invite you. If you want to connect to the community, you can go to CKAN.org community page. You'll find a lot of links which can help you in your CKAN journey. You can chat with us on Gitter. You can also ask questions on Stack Overflow. For security-related issues, you can email to security@ckAN.org, and you will also find assistance. If you want to suggest a topic for our next meetup, something which you find interesting and you would like to hear about, I just dropped the link to the document where you can share your idea, and yeah, we'll try to make that happen. And last but not least, you can follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and don't forget to follow us on our new LinkedIn page. It's brand new, and yeah, we need some followers there, so follow us. Thanks, everyone. And oh, one important announcement: August is a vacation month, so we are not going to have a CKAN Monthly live session. So that's pretty important. So I think, yeah, see you in September. Guilherme just dropped the link to the presentation. I captured all links, by the way, in the meeting doc. So yeah, you'll be able to find them there. And also, you can find them usually under the YouTube description. In the YouTube video, there is a description, and all the links are available there. So you shouldn't have problems with that. Yeah. Well, that's it. Have a good summer.
Have a good summer too. Bye-bye.
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 Ciao, ciao.
Bye.